settings, be able to turn it up. Bit rate.
It's already the 2000.
It's at 4,000.
Yeah.
Can you adjust it to 6,000?
Sure.
Just do that and then start. If it doesn't fix it, doesn't fix it. Figure it out later. Alright, we got 10 people in there.
I'm just gonna wait until 9:05.
Please check the video resolution. The current resolution is 1152 by 648, which is not optimal. So it shows a low resolution. Stream's bit rate is higher than the recommended bit rate. It's a bit rate of 1,000. Yeah, it says the resolution is 1152 by 648, but it says that it's higher. They keep popping warnings up about the resolution. So that's not an option. How- We'll figure it out for next time.
Alright folks, welcome to the Blesta live stream on basics of plugin development. I'm Jonathan Jono Ricemuller, lead developer with Blesta. Today we'll be going over what is an extension, what is a plugin, the basic file structure of plugins, then how to create a view, and how to tie into events with Blesta. So first of all, what is an extension? There are several types of extensions or add-ons within Blesta. There are modules, gateways, plugins, and messengers. Each of them have unique functionality that they tie in with within Blesta. gateways allow for different kinds of payments, modules allow for automatic service provisioning, and plugins tie in with a whole bunch of stuff. They can do pretty much anything. They're very powerful. They allow you to create navigation links, manage the database, create new views, new widgets, new service management options, all kinds of things. But today we'll just be focusing on creating a view and tying into events. We're going to go over to start off, we'll go over the file structure of a plugin. I'll pull up NetBeans here. This is my IDE. Now, Blesta in general and plugins within Blesta follow the MVC file structure, the model view controller, using a very lightweight PHP framework called MinPHP. The labels are pretty clear within the file structure. We have a controllers directory, a models directory, and a view directory. For those of you that might not be as familiar with the MVC structure, you can Google it. There are plenty of good videos out there, but basically it's the idea of separating the front end, the back end, and the database interactions into three parts. The views are the front end, the back end is the controllers, and the database interactions are handled by the model. These are fairly clearly labeled here. In addition to these basic files, we have language files, which are used to make the product multilingual. We have these directories labeled by language code, which allow us to define strings that are matched up with language keys that will automatically be pulled in based on the user's selected language. In addition, we have the config.json file. This file stores basic information on the plugin, such as the author, the version number, the name and description. You can notice looking at the name and description that they have language keys which match the definitions in our language file, name and description. These will automatically be pulled in when displaying our plugin in the plugin list. So if I show you Chrome here in our plugin list, we can see my live stream helper. That name is automatically pulled in from the language file along with the version from the config file. The last file that I want to point out is the underscore plugin file. So this will be your plugin name underscore plugin, and this is where all the heavy lifting happens. So let's show this here. And this is where the database tables are created. This is where we define the different links that we're generating. This is where we define what events we're tying into. This is where the magic happens. So let's look at creating a basic view with a plugin. So here I've already created a plugin for us to work with. I called it the Live Stream Helper plugin. And if I scroll up here, you'll see this navigation link is being generated by the plugin. Now, if we look in the underscore plugin file, we'll see where this link is coming from. I'll pull back up the IDE. We'll see here in this get actions method, we tell it where the action is going to be displayed, which is in the primary staff navigation. We give it the URI that navigation item is going to link to. And then here we have another language definition that defines the name of this navigation link. If we look back, we'll see that this is called helper objects. And we'll see that that too is coming from the language file right here. Now, if we go to our page, I've created a simple form and list, very generically named. This form adds generic objects and then lists them. Now here we can see if I enter an object here, object number 3, submit it. We get a success message, we get our new object here, and we have this sortable table. Now let's look at the files that make this happen. First of all, when we click the link and we're directed to the URI, it's caught by the controller. So open that up. Now, we'll see by default, looking at our URI here, in the navigation you can clearly see that the name matches the file. Right. So here we have the plugin, livestream helper, admin main, index for the URI. Then looking at our files, we can see we're in the livestream helper plugin, in the admin main controller, and we're looking at the index action. Blesta has very transparent URIs like that, which makes it easy to find what exactly you're working with. All right. Now, we'll talk about some of this stuff in the back end in just a minute, but the main thing I want to point out to you here is that we're visiting the index action, and automatically that will direct us to the view file called admin main. Now, if the action name was something other than index, let's say it was view, then the view file would be named admin_main_view. But index is a special case, and so it's just by the controller name admin main. Now, examining the different parts of the page, we see we have this outer widget, we have a form, and we have a table of objects. Let's show where each of those are coming from in the code. In Blesta, we use the widget helper. The widget helper automatically generates well-formatted HTML to make the views look contained and modular. This clear statement is just to clear any previous variables that might have been set to the widget helper, which will usually be none, but better safe than sorry. In here we define the title to give to the widget, HTML attributes to define, and this third parameter controls what parts of the widget are displayed. This comes into play when we're making AJAX requests, but that's beyond the scope of this video. Okay. Within the widget, we have a form. Blesta makes form creation fairly simple using the form helper. You can see this form create statement, which tells us where to submit the form to and any HTML attributes. Then within that, we define different fields, still using the form helper, using the label method, and then field and field type. So we have here a field text, and that automatically generates this text field for us in the interface. that will receive the field name, the default field value, and any HTML attributes to go along with that. Once we're finished with our form, we create our submit button, and we call the form end method. Now on the back end, handling our form, here we check the controller property post to see if the form has been submitted. We pass these to our live stream objects model. Then we check for errors from that model, and we set messages based on that. Now, a couple of things I want to point out here. If you're using a model in a controller, you have to load that model. We do that using the uses method. When loading a model from a plugin, you prefix it with the name of the plugin in camel case. Here we have livestream helper dot, and then the name of our model, which is livestream helper objects. If we were to load one of the core models, we just enter the name, such as clients. That then would be accessible using this clients. And we could call whatever method we wanted on that. The other thing I want to point out here is how to set messages. We have two methods used to set messages: set message and flash message. The distinction here is that you use flash message when you're going to use a redirect, and set message when you won't. You give it the message type, you give it the string to display, and then these additional parameters are necessary when being used in a plugin. They define what template to use for the message and what view to display it in. The main thing you need to know is that these are the parameters you should submit when you're accessing messages through a plugin that will cause any error, keep any errors from happening. So for set message, we have the false null false, and for flash message, we have just the null false. So here, this form submits an object, displays any errors if there are any, or displays a success message and redirects back to this page. We'll show that in the interface real quick. I have a input rule set up on the model to prevent us from submitting an object with an empty name. So we get please enter an object name as an error message. But if we enter a valid name, we get the success message and the redirect back to this page where we can see our new object. All right, that is pretty much what I wanted to cover for views. Then I wanted to talk to you about tying into events. There are various events defined within Blesta, mostly having to do with models. So if we open a model file like the client's model, and we look at the create method, we can see at the end of this method, after everything has been created, an event is triggered for this client's create event. Oh, apologies. Let me bring up the IDE for you. So we've opened the client's model and we scroll to the bottom of the create method. We see an event is being triggered here for clients.create. Now within our underscore plugin file, we can look at the get events method and we see that we've registered a listener for this event. We define what event it's listening for, in this case clients.create, and then the method within the underscore plugin file that will be handling it. Now I've set up a basic example here that ties into the client's create event. that will simply append the word plugin to the last name of the client. So if we create a client named First Test, then the name will end up First Test Plugin. Let's go ahead and see that in the interface. Let's see. Looks like we already have a client named First Test, so we'll go with Second Test. Very creative naming. We click Create Client, and we'll see, even though we entered test for the name, last name, now we have Second Test Plugin due to our event tie-in. Now, in these event tie-ins, you can do basically whatever you'd like. You might want to modify an invoice after it's been created. You might want to check when a payment is made and send an email based on that. There are all kinds of things that you can do with the event tie-ins, but this is just a basic example. All right. Now, one more thing I want to point out that I think is very important for plugin development is the new extension generator that we've created for Blesta that helps things get going very quickly. So we can see here that I've actually created the helper for this tutorial, partially using the extension generator. I come in afterwards and made some modifications, but this helped me get the bare bones and take out a lot of the work. So I want to just walk through this real quick, making a plugin very similar to the one we've just seen. I'll call this one Helper 2. Select the plugin type. Use the advanced form to give us more options when generating this extension. We can give our plugin a description. Add an author, Blesta. Here we define database tables. We'll create a helper to objects table similar to our previous object table. Helper objects. Then we'll create a navigation link using these actions. Call this one Helper 2 objects. Create another tie-in to the client's create method or event. We'll select to generate this in the Blesta plugins directory, then we'll generate the extension. If we go to our plugin list, we'll see the new plugin in the available plugins tab. Here we have our description, name, all generated. We can install this. We see our navigation link is created. We see a view not quite like the other one because we haven't filled out the details, but a basic view has been created for us. And then looking back at our IDE, we can see that the files have been generated. They're very, very similar to what we've been looking at, with all the language, model, view, controller files, and our underscore plugin file that automatically has generated this database content for us, and the navigation links, and the event tie-ins. That's all I have for today's live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope this has been helpful to you. Are we going to do any questions or anything? we'll now take a moment to see if you guys have any questions or topics that I can cover for you, either today or in future videos. Let us know in the chat, and hopefully we'll be able to respond and be helpful.
Someone says, how do we do logging within a plugin?
How do you do logging within a plugin? So plugins don't necessarily have logs like say modules would. So plugins, when they're logging, will log to the monolog files generated by Blesta inside your Blesta logs directory. Now the way that they can do this is primarily through the controllers. So one rule of thumb whenever you're developing for Blesta, the easiest thing to do is look for what you're doing, see if it's already been done somewhere, and don't make things hard on yourself by trying to recreate things from scratch. So here I'll find where we're using the logger. Let's see. I will see. Move to our controller. Copy this in. I'll explain this to you guys in a moment, what exactly is happening here. But all right. So looking at this code I've just added here, and I hope to make this plugin accessible to you guys so you can look over it afterwards, look through the files. So I'm going to add some comments here. Alright, so the controllers, any controller within Blesta inherits from eventually the app controller class. Now the app controller class has this get from container method. Here we're going to call that asking for a logger object. I'm going to assign that just to a class property here in our controller, this logger. And then you're going to call what kind of log you want to create. It's going to be the method. So here if we're doing an error message, we would say this is an error message. All right. Then when we visit our helper page, a log will be generated within your error log files that contains that message. In fact, I will show you that after I clear some things out of my text editor. Let's see. All right. You can see here at the top we have this message. This is an error message. Same thing if I were to create a notice, let's say. Then reload this page. We'll see another one of these. This is an error message. if I open the notice logs, I did not change the message, but this will also show us this is an error message. Now, before I move on from that, I want to show you guys where you can find, let's see, that log file, that logger. Comes from the monolog library. So if you go under vendors monolog source, monolog to the logger file, that's where you'll find all these different methods. You can see that there's all kinds of different logs that you can create, from debug to emergency. So they're all just named basically the methods to generate those logs. See, are we getting any other questions from the chat?
That's it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. We look forward to creating more tutorials, doing more live streams, and being more helpful. So happy coding.